Hey everybody, I'd like to welcome you to the Surreal Babygate special, New Omelettes, Worst to Best ranking. Alright, so we're gonna get right into it. In last place is the 2017 album, The Daily Egg. Yes, in last place is The Daily Egg. This was an interesting place in time for the New Omelettes because they had earlier that year released Spring Egg Wakening, a very lo-fi, live-sounding return to roots album for the New Omelettes. So where did they go from here? I think they were shooting for a more polished, evolved sort of indie sound for many of the songs here, but the result just feels very bland, very flat sounding. As always, there are some standouts. Burton's List is a pretty bonkers rock song. The Loop is a really nice ballad in the middle of the album, and Bean Man is another surprising, catchy, sort of grunge rock song. Overall, though, I think this album does not stand up to the band's material before or since. Just kind of a very meh album overall. Wanna get away. Up next is Eggs and Vision. Yes, this may surprise some of you, but Eggs and Vision is second to worst on this list. While it's certainly a worthy debut for our Eggy friends, the track list here does very little to prepare us for what the New Omelettes would later become. They keep it pretty simple here, with mostly live recorded, very lo-fi sounding garage rock and art rock. They definitely wrote some good songs here. We all know Night Vision is a classic. Slush Ceremony is a really eerily awesome, in-the-moment sounding Woodstock jam. Magni Superveil and Madeline are beautiful, slow tearjerkers. But the New Omelettes really didn't have a goal in mind at this point. It's just a short collection of slightly weird rock songs. It doesn't do a lot for me. It's a good intro to the New Omelettes, but I don't find myself going back to it that often. Renegade Winter is next on my list. This is sort of a loose concept album from the winter of 2016, with the Omelettes posing as mid-19th century soldiers trying to survive a harsh winter, paralleling the harsh winters of Philadelphia and the struggle of everyday life. The thing is, the concept doesn't translate that well through all of the songs. There seems to be a lot of filler here, with sort of these short, inconsequential interlude tracks. They really don't do a lot for me. There are, however, some really great highlights here, like Rictus and the title track. Eskimo Casino is still one of the band's greatest triumphs, with a very memorable music video that I still watch up to this day. It's a very catchy, piano-driven rock song that almost reminds me of Billy Joel a little bit. Overall, though, this album feels very long-winded, and it isn't one that I go back to very often. My Star Wars watch don't tip your ball. Next up is Reborn Again. This is another album from the New Omelettes' early era, where they were extremely prolific. This is an album where I think the New Omelettes really threw caution to the wind after dipping their toes into the musical insanity on their previous album, The Keys to Eggland, which I will get to soon enough. I think the intense minimalism and the courage the band had to take even the strangest idea and just run with it really ends up benefiting some of these early albums. Songs like Morning Dunkin' Donuts Trip and Disco Fry and Bowie Waitress are just off the walls insane, to the point where I'm just questioning what you can really get away with musically if you're just bold and honest about it. Syrup is a great and bizarre pop song that I always get stuck in my head. Overall, though, this album suffers a lot from being too short and a little too out there and just undercooked. It's a decent early mission statement for the band that I wouldn't skip over. I'm in class, I write letters, I'm so smart, I look great. Next is an Eggy Haunting, the New Omelettes' sophomore album from the fall of 2014. I think the band took a really refreshing turn for their second album by filling it with a lot of these very minimal, breezy acoustic folk songs that showcase a knack for interesting and strange lyrics. This is also the first album where they really start dipping into these really left field song structures and ideas, like on the song Me, where most of it is an easygoing 70s style folk song, and then just randomly breaks into the experimental, distorted, hard rock guitar sections. It's so strange in the best way. Some other highlights are I Won't, which is almost like a breezy Smith-sounding acoustic ballad. Grammar Sucks, with its pummeling punk rock riffs that eventually break into this triumphant ska section. There are a few low points that I think tend to lose your attention, and that's why I would rank it as more of a low-tier, mid-tier album for the New Omelettes. Next is the 10th Egg. This was one of those moments where I think the New Omelettes were realizing it was the end of an era for them and needed a bit of a change of pace. The 10th Egg gives us a back-to-basics approach, but with a more updated, more polished recording sound overall. The songs stay mostly in the wheelhouse of alternative and art rock, really forsaking a lot of the more electronic elements they had been working with for so long, but I think it pays off. The song Radio Friendly is a great example of them mixing up song structures in a really unique way, from the wonky, dissonant, danceable verses to the slow burner, chill but very emotional chorus. Lost My Sense of Quail is a personal favorite of mine, embracing this post-punky sound that I think really works for the New Omelettes. And part 3 of I Wish I Lived in a Jan van Eyck painting is a wonderful, sprawling end to the trilogy of songs that spans over 3 different albums. What holds this album back is that it runs a little too short, like they kind of rushed to just get it out there. I wish they took more time to expand upon the sound here, because they haven't really returned to it since. It's still a great album. I do really like almost every song from it, even that frightening intro. You got me changed, baby. I got you new shoes. You got me changed, baby. Up next is Spring Egg Wakening. Now this album is very interesting to me because it actually comes after about a year-long hiatus for the New Omelettes, the longest they had ever gone without releasing an album. I think the band saw this as a new beginning for them because sonically, so much of this album mimics the live lo-fi sound of Eggs and Vision, their debut. I think it was smart to take this sound and filter it through the lens of all the albums they had released since then. So they were able to take these live, in-the-moment jams and flesh them out into longer, fuller sounding songs. I mean, this album has hits like Cement Mixer, Chains, My Desk, and one of my all-time favorites, You Gave Me Gasoline, Water. Mermaids and Squalor is a fantastic ballad that reminds me of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Silk Import is a really nice, jammy, groovy opener to the album. I think this album does suffer sometimes from certain songs that just sound very unrealized. The Candy line is hilarious, but in such a bad way. The album does slow down around this point. I don't think the Candy line was a great third song. Strangers on the Edge is a very intense closer though, and I think it's their longest song. It's cool overall to hear the New Omelettes clearly playing in a live raw setting though, and I think this album is pretty worthwhile for that reason. You're the one, pretty one that I see, Gothic girl. Next up, the legendary Keys to Eggland. This album is quite a fascinating case study in what you can truly get away with musically. The New Omelettes took a gigantic leap into the world of experimental, lo-fi, world music, hip-hop, dance, comedy, and while it leaves everyone confused upon first listen, inevitably, it's worth letting the ideas marinate with you, and I think that's when some of the songwriting really starts to show through on the Keys to Eggland. It's a concept album focusing on an ancient utopia known as Eggland that one can access with sacred keys. The keys give you the power to travel through time, seeing the past and future anywhere on Earth or even in other dimensions. The songs here rarely crack the 3-minute mark, so it's very to the point and never overstays its welcome with the absurd ideas. It just keeps plowing forward and clocks in at just under 30 minutes. There are some wonderful highlights here. Rosetta Stone is a weirdo rock and roll hit I think everyone can remember. Puppy Store Window just never fails to bring a smile to my face, with the dinky, twinkling acoustic guitar riffs, and just the sheer strange awkwardness of those chorus transitions. Leather is another top New Omelettes song for me, and as the longest song on the album, it wastes not a second of it, with its pummeling industrial beat and rapping that quickly morphs into a millennial pop anthem for the chorus. And the Mindy's Ghost synth outro on this cut just gives me chills. It also contains some extremely twisted, aggressive, and distorted garage rock cuts, like Thrashing Rain and Eat and Then Walk, with its monkey screaming intro. These cuts are hilarious as they are disturbing. They do a great job, though, of contrasting these experimental and comedy horror tracks like Bamboo Zoo with the sunny 70s FM pianos, horns, and world-influenced percussion of Africa Unleashed, which is another favorite of mine. Overall, this is an essential album for the New Omelettes catalog, and it's the only one on Spotify, so give it a listen.
Giant colors make me wanna die. Skip to class so I could go get high. If I can't make the art I wanna make.
Next up is the very appropriately titled Exponential Growth. This is the first album where I think the New Omelettes saw their potential and decided to get a little more serious with a lot of the songwriting, while still maintaining the bizarre quirks that made them so interesting in the first place. Songs like Yellow Book and Ducks are pretty much just beautiful, shimmering folk ballads, with lovely lyrics about growing up and watching time pass by. Plus One is a visceral, left-field hip-hop song with spooky synths and auto-tuned singing that the New Omelettes were quickly becoming known for. Found and Fabricated is an extremely interesting fusion of electronic, experimental, and folk, and utilizes some of these animal noise samples and layered vocals that are just mind-bending. The way this song just builds and explodes for the final chorus is beautiful. I also appreciate the flow of much of this album. The way Plus One seamlessly flows into Diane's colors, and the beautiful 2-part mini-epic, Blocks A and B. I've always loved the speed synth pop of Part 1, and how it goes into the almost ambient Beach Boys vocal piece of Blocks Part 2. The New Omelettes maintain the traditional styles they perform so well on songs like Blue Cow and Rustle, but also push their boundaries further than ever with electro bops like Abacus Wishes, My Big Question, and the insane album closer Omega. Overall, this is a must-listen, front to back. There's a lot of variety and detail to take in on this expansive release from the New Omelettes. Up next is the New Omelettes' latest album that was released earlier this year. This, to me, is the New Omelettes' most serious release in terms of playing, mixing, songwriting. They take themselves more seriously on this album, but I think it pays off. It's good to see the band maturing to the point where the songs can still keep the bizarre characteristics that make them New Omelettes songs, but still continue to be catchy and listenable musically. They also maintain a lot of variety track for track. We have more straightforward indie rock tracks like Betwixt, Fully Alive, and Big Girls Don't Cry. Then we have intense, beautiful fusions of folk, art rock, and dark wave on My Beautiful Feelings and I Dreamt of a Knife. These two songs especially push the New Omelettes into some deep and twisted emotional territory that I never thought they'd touch upon. We've also got tracks here that almost go into a funk rock or dance pop direction, like the trippy I Live You, or the absolute 80s style banger Midnight Magic. The album closer, You're Impossible, is one of the catchiest and also heart-wrenching songs these boys have ever come up with. The production on this album really shines overall, and we hear the New Omelettes in a distinct clarity we've never really heard from them before. You could tell they really took their time on each song, and it really shows in every aspect of the tracks. Fantastic latest addition to the New Omelettes catalog, and that's why it's in the top 3 spot.
Only time will come again. We can learn to believe today. Only time will come again. If you're brave enough to rise ahead.
And the number 2 spot is Egg Psalms, a mini album that dropped not too long after Exponential Growth in the early spring of 2015. Even though this album is short, it's extremely to the point, more than any of their other albums, and every track is essential. This was a good point in their career to drop an airtight album, with no filler, all killer. In just over 20 minutes, the New Omelettes take us on a journey through funk, indie rock, synth pop, and even old classical and religious music. The opener, Nosferatu, is a spooky, funky electro-rock hit that starts things off with a bang. Listen to Me is a beautiful, sunshine-baked, uplifting, vintage rock hit. 100 Years War is a very angular, post-punky style track that has some great guitar and bass work. The two interlude tracks, Fifth Symphony and Moses Was Right, are great little mood setters. And, well, Holy Times. I mean, it's one of the New Omelettes' greatest hits, and one of their most iconic synth riffs. Everyone loves Holy Times. This album also contains the first part of the 3-song series, I Wish I Lived in a Jan van Eyck Painting. Part 1 is a standout track, mainly because of the live drums and aggressive instrumentation that feels like a great update on the Eggs and Vision era material. And the closer of this album, These Visitors Are Not of the Lord, is a brilliant, expansive piece of experimental synth, ambient, and rock. A very surreal, atmospheric instrumental for the first half soon blends into a triumphant, guitar-driven rock song, which climaxes and then sets you down very calmly for its final moments. The way this song ends with a simple guitar and vocal part is perhaps the most iconic ending to a New Omelettes project to date. This is an essential album from the New Omelettes, and I might suggest it as a first album to listen to if you're trying to get into them. Finally, number 1, The Great Eggscape. This epic, expansive, and majestic project is like the New Omelettes reached a new plateau. When they released Egg Psalms, they couldn't help but top it for their follow-up. This is the New Omelettes' longest album, and I think deservedly so. Almost every song on this album is over 3 minutes, and packed with bizarre structural changes and endless layers of detail. The way the band genre bends on this album makes it overall very difficult to pigeonhole into one particular style. But they touch upon everything from hip-hop, electronic, and 2000s pop to grunge, folk rock, avant-garde, and shoegaze. Songs like the opener, The East, switch quickly between these laid-back, psychedelic rap verses to twanging, almost country prog-style guitar riffs for the bridge, and then slow, menacing heavy metal for the chorus. Throwing Yourself and Catamaran also move through these multi-phases that just pass before you even can fully take in what's going on, and it makes you really want to repeat listens. Robot Rick's Blind Date is an explosive electronic song that warps into a hypnotic interlude for the middle of the album. Nymphs in the Sun is a gorgeous little 70s ballad with horns and flutes that make me feel like I'm in a magical medieval forest. The second part of I Wish I Lived in a Jan van Eyck Painting is on this album, and arguably it's the best part of the 3, with crushing, distorted guitar and bass riffs, heavy drumming, paired with these soaring vocals singing about art, creativity, and the inspiration that is passed down through centuries between artists. Otzi is another fantastic song that opens up with a guitar electro-fusion, eerie pop song, and soon breaks into this slow, grinding, grunge instrumentation that is just so ominous and menacing. It makes my skin crawl. 7,000-Year-Old Memory closes this album, and it's a great way to sum up all of the themes here of ancient ancestry, survival, and historical events that inspire so much of this album. It's about longing to live in a different time, where everything is more tangible, and human experience is placed above all else. This album is a portrait of a human mind, one that scatters in all kinds of directions, but always returns to what's important. Track for track, this album makes me feel strangely human, yet alien at the same time. And that's why it's number 1 on my list of New Omelettes albums. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you agree with my list. Comment your opinions down below. Thank you, Surreal Babygate, for hosting me and this New Omelettes video. Check out some New Omelettes music videos on Surreal Babygate. They host the New Omelettes as their house band, so check it out. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye!